So what did ancient Egyptians believe? Ancient Egyptians believed that the person was comprised of three essential elements. The first element is the body. The body is the actual physical body. It is unique to each person. The body changes as the person gets older, and death is considered to be the last change. The second element is Ba. Like the body, Ba is unique to each person. In modern terms, Ba can be thought of as one's personality or character, a composite of all the non-physical things that make the person different from all other people. You, the reader's Ba, would include your memories, your preferences, the manner in which you express your emotions, the stuff you know, your intelligence, and etc. The third element is Ka. Ka is the life force. Unlike Ba, Ka does not represent the individual. It is a universal force, something shared by all living people. In the beginning, the Creator made Ka, and being in possession or not in possession of Ka is the difference between being alive and being dead. So that pretty much sums up the foundation of ancient Egyptian afterlife beliefs. And as you can see, when you explore these beliefs, you will see that every human being has a unique essence that makes them them. And that goes back to what I say when I say that we are all expressions of the one. So every human is unique, but what makes us all the same is we are still all different forms of that one creator that started everything in the beginning. So Ka represents that primordial source. And notice in Egyptian beliefs, in the beginning, the Creator made Ka, and being in possession or not in possession of Ka is the difference between being alive and being dead. You really think about that concept, Ka being this source that cannot cease to exist, the source of all. There's really no way you can ever be not in possession of Ka, because if you have a heartbeat, the energy that's giving you life right now comes from that primordial source. Everything is an expression of the all. So to say that if you don't have Ka, you are dead is not the concept of death that many of you are thinking. The body dies, but Ka always remains. And the expression that we call the body would always find itself re-embodied, because that expression is just an expression of the Creator. And that expression is a continuum, and you're on a journey of perfection. And man has always been on a journey of perfection, and he has always asked questions. And what has kept man on this quest is because us being expressions of that primordial source, we are individual driplets from the primordial ocean, and that water, no matter where it goes, will always be water. So when you think of water, it's the beginning of everything. It's the life-giving source. It's very sacred. It's a very sacred element. When you start to study how water moves and how it functions and how it transitions solid, liquid, gas, it tells a story of the Ka, of the soul, of the all, because no matter where it rains on the earth, all water finds its way back to the source of the ocean at some point in its journey. And then it finds its way back into the atmosphere as a little driplet, journeying to that source again and again and again. This is what we call existence. It's a beautiful story of transitioning. But they have shaped the way we see death, and that's one of the main reasons I'm making these videos, is to undo some of the spookism and make us back comfortable with what we are. So there are many variations of the ancient Egyptian afterlife belief. The one I'm giving you now is the most general, although it's not the oldest, because when we say ancient Egypt, we're still not talking about ancient Kemet or ancient Kushite afterlife beliefs. Why am I giving you ancient Egyptian afterlife beliefs? Because these are the beliefs that lie at the core of the modern conscious communities today. And just to be clear, what I'm reading to you from this ancient Egyptian afterlife beliefs is very accurate. So far, what we've read about the Ka and the Ba is very accurate. So I just wanted to point that out. So I'm just giving you information here, And I'm pretty sure if we go back into ancient times and read some afterlife beliefs, they would line up because there's not many different scenarios that the human mind can fathom about the afterlife. It's a very mysterious subject, a very personal subject, and it's crazy that it's not a popular public conversation, as I mentioned previously. So there's not many variations or room to come up with scenarios and afterlife scenarios based upon when you start to think of what can happen to the soul. There's very limited options, and we understand that everyone has a heaven, everyone have a hell, because the human mind can only perceive the duat. So what I want to point out to you about the duality is that the duality creates the Trinity, and most of the time we miss the Trinity, which is the reality. We live in the now. So when we look at heaven and hell concepts, we got to understand that these are transitioning realms that were turned into realms like heaven and hell for control purposes. There are no streets of gold and there are no lakes of fires that are floating in darkness out there anywhere. When you read these ancient afterlife beliefs like I'm doing now, you can see that everyone is saying the same thing, that the soul transitions. But where does it go? Now, that's when the reincarnation conversations come into play. But what constitutes a lot of these ancient afterlife beliefs is reincarnation. So at the end of this journey in all afterlife beliefs is always a new beginning. It's always a new saga, because you're an expression that's constantly trying to perfect itself and become back unified to the source. You're not separate from the source. Your perception creates the illusion of separateness. So every moment you're alive, when you're feeding your mind and feeding your soul with knowledge, it's a form of becoming back one through understanding, becoming back one with that source. So you will notice that there are very spiritual people walking this planet who can do some very, I would say, magical things and spiritual things based upon who they are and a level of awareness in their incarnation at this time. So all of us will eventually cross the same paths and end up at the same great place. Some will get there faster than others. Just like when raindrops fall, some raindrops hit the ground before others, but they all end up in the same place. So with that being said, we're going to move on. And some of these ancient Egyptian beliefs, when the body dies, both Ba and Ka are released through the mouth and are thereby separated from the body and depart for the underworld. However, unless things go poorly, the separation is not permanent, and eventually Ba, Ka, and the body are reunited in the underworld and resurrect in the form of Ak. Now, you can do your research further on all of this, but Ox, those who successfully make the transition into the underworld of eternal life with the gods. The underworld, as the word suggests, is located underground, where life is conducted in the same way life is conducted above ground, with the exception that there is no suffering, no disease, no poverty, and importantly, no death. Life is permanent, endless, eternal in this part of the underworld. Those who fail to make the transition suffer the fate of becoming re-dead with no hope of resurrection. So basically, you will see here in ancient Egypt, not ancient Kemet, that at this point when we enter the underworld concepts, it's a very interesting story what we just read here. Now, in my analysis of what we read, when we say that unless things go poorly, the separation is not permanent, and eventually Ba, Ka, and the body are reunited in the underworld and resurrected, we see that this underworld has a heavenly abode located in it. A lot of people would hear the word underworld and think about, a place of punishment, of something where souls are being punished. But here we see it's a heavenly abode where there is no suffering, no disease. Now, what is the underworld? What is this passage telling us? Basically, in this transitioning story, when it say those who fail to make the transition suffer the fate of becoming re-dead with no hope of resurrection, because it goes on to say that there are bumps in the road to resurrection in this particular ancient Egyptian underworld story. So, for instance, a prerequisite for safe landing in the underworld of the gods is good conduct in this world prior to death. So, Let me expound on all of that. Since we are all one organism and one human organism, whether we like to see it that way or not, all of the human beings on this planet impact the planet and each other daily, whether we like to admit it or not. We are one being and we all expressions of one primordial source. So to sum all of this up, what happens in my humble opinion, in my analysis, going along with what we just read, what Brother Sanchez believes is that this whole transitioning story describes, again, the raindrop analysis that I made earlier. All of us are on a journey. So some of us are going to experience bumps in the road to resurrection. But however, resurrection is a prerequisite. It's something that everyone does. You will resurrect and resurrect and resurrect and resurrect. That is the continuum. That is what makes us eternal. Even when you look at the word resurrection, it actually starts with the first two letters, R-E, which is re. And when you put re in front of anything, it's repetitive. So we can't escape repetition. That is infinity, this story of everlasting transitioning. So we are beautiful snowflakes in a sense. If you understand the concept of how snowflakes are formed and what's going on with that science, it'll break down the whole afterlife journey of the soul. So there are some snowflakes that are going to take forever to reunite back down here to the ground, to Mother Earth. But there's some that's going to fall just fine. But they're all snowflakes and they're all headed to the same destination. And understand that this is one creation made up of all of us living organisms. A lot of these afterlife beliefs were corrupted, especially during the final dynasties of ancient Egypt and on up into today. A lot of the afterlife stories and underworld stories turned into hell to induce fear into the masses for control purposes. So I'm just giving you back the ancient truth here, and we're going to move on.